Next up, we have Rogue. Rogue currently is going to be keeping a lot of powerful tools with like Excavate right now, and they're getting some cool new stuff too, like Bargain Bin Buccaneer, a 3-cost 3/2 rush combo. Summon a copy of this. It is a pirate. There are some pirate related things in this set, though we are sadly losing Hook Tusk. So there's the greatest pirate payoff is no longer around. But as far as like board control, this is a pretty powerful effect, right? As long as you have any way to enable this, this can be a 2-for-1 or kill a larger minion for 3 mana. And that's just like generally pretty solid. You can also interestingly use Shadow Step to you can kill one thing, Shadow Step one of them, and then like get the extra copy from the other one that you Shadow Step back. But yeah, that just seems like a generally reasonable tool for like board control, which generally means that it's not something that Rogue actually cares that much about, right? Like Rogue typically cares much more about having access to things that are just like kind of directly going to the opponent's face. But maybe it's still good. Next up, we have Dig for Treasure. Draw a minion. If it's a pirate, get a coin. So obviously, another pirate tool that can be used with the Bargain Bin Buccaneer. One of the really important cards for Rogue that is coming back to core, by the way, is the Buccaneer, Small Time Buccaneer, not Small Time Buccaneer. What's its name? The South Sea Deckhand. Yes, not Buccaneer. I was like, which one is it? But South Sea Deckhand is a sort of classic rogue card in particular, because it is cares about you having a weapon. Rogue can always have a weapon with its hero power, and having access to dig for treasure as a 1-cost card draw, get a coin. So effectively 0 cost, more or less. If you are playing a deck that is fully pirate oriented, it's another reason to potentially be playing stuff like the Bargain Bin Buccaneer to ensure that you are getting value from your dig for treasures as you're digging up South Sea deckhands to kill your opponents. Speaking of pirates, next up we have Sandbox Scoundrel, a 5-cost 4/3, but has miniaturize. Battlecry, your next card this turn costs 3 less. So obviously the front half of this is pretty weak, right? But it can set you up for some very powerful combos because you can play the Scoundrel and then get the miniaturized version, and then suddenly your next thing is a 1-cost card that makes the next thing cost 3 less. That you can also Shadow Step to be a 0-cost card that makes the next thing cost 3 less. So this is a card that can create some pretty interesting combination circumstances that you can do some pretty crazy stuff in Rogue. Rogue obviously has lots of ways to do things that are way above their mana value, whether it's prep, this thing, whatever. So this is certainly a card that is in that vein. They can let you cast some really big spells ahead of schedule, like Everything Must Go. 8-cost spell, summon 2 random 4-cost minions, cost 1 less for each card you've drawn this turn. So this is less likely to be a card that gets like cheated into play by something like pirate combo stuff, but more likely to be a card that goes into a deck like 777s. If you're playing a deck that's looking to just churn out a bunch of stuff and play 777s early, Everything Must Go is a very powerful card to draw off of that because it will always cost 0 if you draw it with 777. Because the 777 is drawing you 7 cards, and then suddenly, boom, we've drawn 8 cards this turn, and now this is free. Is this good? Maybe not, right? And as to whether like there's enough payoff for the 777 style strategy without stuff like Graveyard, without Draka, you're losing a lot of the tools that style of like miracle, draw a ton of cards, play a ton of cards in one turn previously had, at least. But this is a new payoff that is potentially a incentive to play that style of deck. As to whether that's like remotely worth the requirement of being able to cast that card, especially with the Trickster gone, so you can no longer cast 777s for 0. Maybe you still need to use Sandbox Scoundrel, but again, is it worth it when you don't have Draco, when you don't have Location? Probably not. Next up we have Shoplifter Goldbeard. After you summon a pirate, summon a copy of it that attacks a random enemy, then dies. So this is a weird card. This feels like it really wants you to have like pirates with death rattles, right? Like you want to have like, cause for one, this is after you summon a pirate. So technically, this works with things Obviously this doesn't work off the things that it copies, right? Because like as written, this would summon a copy that would attack and die, and then that would summon a copy of that. It obviously doesn't work that way. But if your opponent has like an empty board, and you play this and play a bunch of pirates, they're gonna kind of explode, especially along any kind of bounce effects. If you play like this with like Bargain Bin Buccaneer, for instance, you're summoning, because this is when you summon a pirate. The Bargain Bin Buccaneer will summon 2/3/2s, which will then summon 2/3/2s attack and die, and then if you Shadow Step one of the Bargain Buccaneers, it'll then summon 2/3/2s, which will then summon 2/3/2s, attack face and die. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, because again, it is summon, not play. So it does work with Bargain Bin Buccaneer. It works with any kind of like hand buffs or whatever you might have. Not that those really exist necessarily within Rogue. And then again, if there's any sort of like death rattle things, you'll get the death rattles from the copies as well. But yeah, it feels like this is basically like, hey, we're gonna try, like, this is a way to end the game burning your opponent out by throwing pirates at their face, and that is definitely at least a pretty appealing payoff to playing a pirate-centric deck. And with the dig for treasure, being able to dig up your pirates as well as have coins gives you the chance for a bigger combo turn alongside the shoplifter guy to be able to blow them up. Next we have Sonya Water Dancer. It was obviously a callback to Sonya Shadow Dancer, who was previously, whenever something dies, you get a 1-cost copy of it. This is after you play a 1-cost card, get a copy of it that costs 0. So this is definitely a pretty interesting card. I don't know necessarily what you want to do with this, right? Like, this could be used with like Dig for Treasure to be able to, get more Dig for Treasures that draw you, get you coins that effectively are netting mana. Although if you're playing this in your Dig for Treasure deck, your first Dig for Treasure that hits Sonya may feel bad. I don't know what you do with this, right? But it's cool that it gives you, like, hey, what are all the 1-cost things you can play alongside this? You can play this and play, South Sea Deckhand, which gives you a South Sea Deckhand cost 0. And then you're like, okay, play this South Sea Deckhand. Now I can Shadow Step at 3 and play that, and that'll give me a 0-cost copy of that. But yeah, overall, just a lot of cool stuff that you can do with this, which I think is, just like really exciting puzzle to solve, which is a lot of Rogue cards. Next we have the Crystal Cove, the Crystal Core, but not forever. For those of you who don't recognize this is a callback to the original Rogue quest, which was the Crystal Core, which was one of the most miserable cards of all time that got multiply nerfed and was still broken. But yeah, Crystal Cove. Next menu you summon this turn has its stat sets to 4/4. Clearly, the best use of this is to just summon Tiny Fin or Penguin and just get 0-cost 4/4s. You can also use it with this could be something you use alongside the Shoplifter plus the South Sea Deckhand and Shadow Step. So you just keep Shadow Step. You play a 4/4 deckhand, get a copy of a 4/4 deckhand, attack with a 4/4 deckhand, hit them with the other 4/4 deckhand, Shadow Step, get a 2-power deckhand, 4-power deckhand, hit them with those, Shadow Step, boom, 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 boom. But yeah, Crystal Cove, obviously, any kind of like cheap things that you want to make bigger, like charge minions, for instance, can be powerful there for sure. Could be powerful with things that copy, like the Bargain Bin Buccaneer. Lots of stuff like that. Not obviously nearly as powerful as the OG quest by any means, but certainly has some applications. Next up, Thistle Tea Set. Discover a spell from another class, get a copy of it. Thief Rogue is alive and well. We do still, I believe, have Tess, but there's not really that many cards in for like Thief Rogue payoffs, I believe. But this is, a throwback to Thistle Tea, which was like, what was it? Draw a card, get 3 copies of it or something like that. This is, obviously a modernized version that is at least a Discover effect. That, can get some interesting stuff that can allow you to set up some cool tests in the future. But again, not really that many support cards for Thief Rogue. There is Cutlass back. That is true. The Cutlass is coming back. And Cutlass was definitely a very, very powerful tool for a longer game Thief Rogue. So maybe that's what I'm going to have to play. But yeah, there's Cutlass coming back. What else is coming back? Oh, Feldori Strider. Okay, maybe we can find a way to make this work. Raiding Party's coming back so that you can dig and find your Cutlass. We'll see. We'll see if it's good enough to support our Lady Tats. Next we have Toy Boat. 2 cost 2/3. After you summon a pirate, draw a card. That's a powerful card. So yeah, obviously this can work extremely well with Bargain Bin Buccaneer. This can work extremely well with any cheap pirates. This can, you can just play this, Shadow Step it, play it, but Bargain Bin Buccaneer, boom, draw, 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 draw. Super powerful card draw engine for a pirate deck. It is not itself a pirate, so it does run the risk if you are using Dig for Treasure, you don't get your coin, but at the same time, it is such a major payoff, to just churn through your deck as you're summoning pirates, especially with things like Shoplifter or Bargain Bin Buccaneer that are generating multiple things with a single card that can just dig you through your deck, find anything. This is just a super powerful card. Really, really strong card draw engine that heavily, heavily supports a pirate-based strategy. And finally, Water Cannon, also a card that can work very well in a pirate deck. After your hero attack, summoning one pirate that attacks a random enemy. Also works very well with the toy boat because it gives you a 0-cost pirate that will draw you a card. Potentially trigger all your various things that care about pirates. Your, what is it? The blah blah blah. Yeah, Shoplifter, that guy. You can use the Water Cannon with Crystal Cove to get a 4/4 that summons a random enemy. Is Crystal Cove play? No, it's summoned. So yeah, this works with Crystal Cove would work with things that are summoned like off of Water Cannon as well. So, but yeah, definitely a number of really interesting cards in Rogue here. I do think that the heaviest synergy clearly is pointing toward Pirate Rogue, and as I mentioned before, the fact that South Sea Deckhand is back gives you burst potential for your finishers for any kind of Pirate Rogue deck. I think the sort of odd man out card is the Everything Must Go, which obviously, as I mentioned, leans toward wanting to be a Miracle style deck with potentially 7/7s, which lost most of the rest of its support. So that feels like a card that probably needs some more help before it's doing anything. But the rest, definitely feel like some powerful pieces that you can use in a wide variety of various rogue decks for general utility and power. But like I said, between like Toy Boat, Shoplifter, Dig for Treasure, Buccaneer, a lot of things that make you want to lean toward playing pirates, and Yarhar, let's go. All right, next up we have Shaman, including a batch of cards that were revealed by someone very smart and very handsome, like this one, Baking Soda Volcano. I believe what I said in the reveal about this one is that it's a very powerful control tool in basically any kind of Shaman deck that is looking to extend the game. 10 damage, randomly spent among all minions with lifesteal is super powerful, right? Like, this is a incredible tool for coming back against any kind of aggressive deck. One of the key things about this is all minions, not opposing minions, and it can even be used alongside your hero power in order to give you life back, even against decks that don't have a board, right? Like if your opponent's like done a bunch of damage to you early, and then it's looking to burn you out and not playing significant minions, you can just use your hero power, make some totems, and then blow up your own board to life steal back. I think this card is just clearly super powerful. 10 damage AoE for 4 mana, like by itself is already quite good, and then life steal to just dig you out of whatever kind of hole you might be in is just extremely, extremely powerful. So I expect this card to see a lot of play in any kind of control and Shaman deck. Next up, Fairy Tale Forest. 3-cost location, 2 durability. Draw a Battlecry minion. It costs 1 less. This card is pretty nuts. Super high value card. Obviously, this is giving you, not only 2 card draws, but specifically 2 targeted card draws. You could play a deck that just has, you probably won't play a deck that just has like Shutter Block and Hagatha or whatever, but this gives you like the ability to like dig for very specific cards in a deck that is based around comboing with certain things. The cost reduction as well is extremely powerful to enable a lot of different like multi-card combos. Like I said, with like Shutter Block, be able to reduce the cost of that. Hagatha, be able to reduce the cost of that. Both those extremely, extremely powerful cards. And obviously, if you're playing a deck with Shutter Block in particular, which we'll just show now, you're probably going to have a significant other number of Battlecry cards to combo with. But just being able to dig to one or the other so that you're much more likely to have any of those together is just very powerful. But speaking of Shutter Block, this card's super strong. 6 cost 5/5 with Miniaturize. That part's really crucial. Battlecry. Your next Battlecry triggers 3 times but can't damage the enemy hero. So, a couple of key things about this. Can't damage the enemy hero just means cannot deal damage to them. If the effect itself doesn't deal damage to them, then it works. Like something, for instance, like gain attack. That didn't deal damage to them. That gave you attack, which then allows you to damage them. If it's like, casting a spell that the spell would damage them, that works, right? Like it's just the battle cry itself cannot damage them. So it's very interesting. It says can't damage them, but there's a lot of ways it still can. Like for instance, with this Sand Art Elemental, give your hero +1 attack and Wind Fury. You could triple this up with Shutter Block, and that works because you're giving your hero a plus attack and Wind Fury, which is not itself damaging the opponent. It is giving you attack, which then damages the opponent. Or if you play Shutter Block with original Shutter Walk, the Shutter Walk itself is not damaging the opponent. It is recasting all of the battle cries, some of which may damage the opponent. So there's a lot of intricacies there about like it's not like it's making your opponent immune for the turn, right? It is making your opponent doing things that then damage the opponent. You could Shutter Block into Shutter Block, but it won't do anything. It will just make the next one happen 3 times. If you look at Shutter Block, your next battle cry triggers 3 times, but can't damage the enemy hero. It's not triple, it's 3 times. So Shutter Block into Shutter Block would just be your next battle cry triggers 3 times, which doesn't do anything. Also, a card I revealed, Hagatha, the Fabled. 5 cost 4/4. Battle cry, draw 2 spells that cost 5 or more. Transform them into slimes that cast the spells. So, this one is pretty sick. The slimes themselves are creatures with the cost equal to the cost of the spell that have battle cry cast the spell. So Hagatha with Shutter Block, for instance, say you Hagatha and you draw this spell, Wish Upon a Star. 7 cost spell, give +2/+3 to all minions in your hand, deck, and battlefield. Let's say you have a miniaturized Shutter Block, and then you play miniaturized Shutter Block into the slime that casts Wish Upon a Star. So now you are giving your board +6/+9, nice, and your hand, deck, and battlefield too. Or hand and deck, I already said board. So yeah, the synergy between Shutter Block and Hagatha enables you to basically Shutter Block any 5+ cost spell. So a lot of really cool things that you can do with the various interstitial synergies between these. Another 5+ card spell, Once Upon a Time. This one's a lot less exciting to triple cast, but summon a random 3 cost Beast, Dragon, Elemental, and Murloc. This one's a little bit weird. There's, relatively small pool, especially of like 3 cost dragons, right? So this is going to do like relatively consistently, like this is going to give you like a bunch of 3/3s, right? Or at least very close to that. So this is not that exciting. It can give you like Once Upon a Time into Wish Upon a Star if you're getting those off of oozes, which is going to give you a huge board. But again, you're talking about like Hagatha into like 5-drop into 6-drop into 7-drop to like have some 5 power guys. This is probably the weaker of the cards. Certainly, much less impressive than like say Wish Upon a Star. So you probably want some other stuff to this to include for your Hagatha hits. This one might not be worth it. Next up, we have Incredible Value. Discover a 4-cost minion, set its attack and health to 7. So this is obviously a callback to Flame Wreath Faceless, the 4-mana 7/7. That was a 4-mana 7/7 with Overload 2. This is you pay the upfront cost of 3, and you can get whatever as a 7/7, which is pretty cool. This I doubt this is likely to be that impressive a card. Maybe this ends up being a deck that like specifically wants shadow spells, or or just play big minions, and it gives you early game stuff that can be used to help set that up. But most likely not going to be a card that sees a lot of play. But I do love the callback. But next up we have Pop-Up Book, 1-cost spell, also a card I revealed. Deal 2 damage, summon 2 0/1 frogs with Taunt. It's a nature spell. This I think is just a solid early game removal spell for any kind of controlling Shaman deck. This is just very, very effective at delaying, opponents who are trying to attack you early. Being able to remove a minion and then get 2 small taunts in the way can really muck up the board against against a lot of opponents. Also, interestingly, has some weird synergy with Baking Soda Volcano. If you as I mentioned before, if your opponent is trying to burn you out, you can just play this, hit them, and then Baking Soda Volcano to heal yourself off of the frogs that you get. Boom, nailed it. I did briefly touch on the standard elemental in the context of Shutter Block, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. Um, so this is a 4 cost 4/4 with miniaturize, give your hero +1 attack and Wind Fury. Obviously, anything that gives you like additional attack, this could be quite valuable with because of the Wind Fury. It can also just be, hey, this is some reasonable board control, can enable you to like trigger the battle cry or rather the death rattle of a weapon faster. Just overall, I think this is just a potentially like just solid card for like elemental decks too, to give you like reasonable board control, especially against stuff like a say like Righteous Protector, and gives you a small elemental that can continue your elemental chain across turns, and has again synergy with any kind of attack buffs to just burn your opponent out. Taking a quick look, there's not any of the like Doomhammer's gone. There's not like Rock Biter or any of those sort of things. There is, I believe, Turn the Tides is sticking around, right? That's from one of the more recent sets. So this alongside like Turn the Tides can be quite powerful for sure. And lastly, since we went through a lot of these pretty quickly, we have Shining Sentinel, a 3 cost, or rather 3 cost, 7 cost, taunt elusive. Oops, we didn't actually click on it. I hovered it. Don't get baited by a hover. 7 cost 3/7 taunt elusive. Battlecry, summon a copy of this. This is fine. Oh, it's Turn the Tides from Sunken City. Curses. Turn the Tides is gone. We can't use it with that. We'll have to find other things. But one of those things worth keeping in mind. That guy exists for any kind of future attack buffs. But yeah, Shining Sentinel, 7 cost 3/7 taunt elusive. Battlecry, summon a copy of this. This is fine. If without any kind of like stat buffs to this, it's pretty difficult, I think, for this to be that appealing. There's already the like 6 cost Divine Shield Lifesteal Elemental Dragon that, in my experience, wasn't really that good. It was a bit too slow against most aggressive decks. This is slower, and obviously elusive can be a good way to ensure that your minions, can't just get popped. But this is like, just not it's just not that great. It's expensive, right? Like this sort of effect this late in the game. Yes, like it's a ton of stats, right? You're getting a ton of health that you can hide behind with 2 copies of this. It's difficult for people to remove outside of something like a Blade Storm. But 7 is just very expensive, right? Like you definitely need to have defenses earlier against aggressive decks, and like I said, against like controlling decks, yeah, it's fine, but like you're getting into like Reno territory. If you're looking at like taunts to save you from Odin, they just get Blade Stormed. Like there's not really that great of a chance for this to potentially save you. Maybe this is awesome if you're playing it in a deck that is gonna like wish upon a star, but like literally anything is good once you've played like a wish upon a star late game, it feels like. So yeah, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's particularly good with like the elemental cards that exist, right? Like most of those want to be like pretty aggressive and use like Scar over the top to kill you. Maybe you're playing like a long game Therazane deck that uses this and like Therazane, and like now you have huge board, and maybe then it's good. Like that certainly is appealing, but again, we're talking about getting to the point where you have Therazane, and like that's starting to get into dreaming territory. But overall, this one feels like it's probably a bit too expensive, but maybe there's like maybe this is just like a late game tool for a control deck that is getting to that point thanks to the Baking Soda Volcano. It just doesn't feel like, it feels like you just do better things once you get to that stage of the game. Maybe it's like the best option that exists right now, though, if you want to just like survive and get to like turn 8, 9, 10. Who knows? But overall, I think there's definitely some very, very exciting, very powerful things here for Shaman. I'm most impressed by the Battlecry stuff. Hagatha looks awesome. Shutterblock looks awesome. Baking to Volcano looks awesome. Fairy Tale Forest looks awesome. Sandart Elemental is kind of, something that maybe can find a home if there's like attack buffs and stuff. Maybe it's good in like Elemental Shaman, like I said, as like a mid game sort of board control slash burst thing. If there are other things that you can use to increase your own attack, but overall, like the stuff that I'm definitely most excited to try is the sort of Hagatha Shutterblock angle, and that definitely feels like I can do some wacky stuff, and that's what I love. All right. We're getting close to the conclusion. We're in the W's. Next up is Warlock, starting with Crane Game. A 9-cost spell. Summon copies of 2 demons in your deck. So obviously, 9's a lot, right? 9 is a big number. So you're only going to want to play this if you're playing a deck full of big demons. Crucially, this is copies, right? So playing this will not stop you from being able to use Sargeras, right? Like if you have Sargeras and you Crane Game, you still have Sargeras in your deck, even though you'll end up with a Sargeras in play that doesn't give you the portal. So you could still play this in a deck that does have Sargeras, though it's a pretty bad hit for you. That said, you're certainly more interested in hitting other things. This is the sort of card that will likely get more powerful as there are additional sets and additional big demons. Also, crucially, there are some cards that have returned to the core set that are very good to hit with this, like Doomguard. So, if you have Doomguard as, your smallest big demon, this could potentially hit double Doomguard, right? And allow you to just charge your opponent's face into oblivion. That said, there isn't like Skull of Gul'dan unless you hit it off of Hearth. Imagine if you were playing Warlock and you had Hearth and you hit the Warlock hand off of Hearth, and then you end up with like Gul'dan to bring back all the Doom Guards that you copied off of this. Boom. But yeah, like I said, this seems like the sort of card that's probably unlikely to be that good at sort of release, because there's not that many huge demons that you can hit off of it. But is likely to potentially become more powerful as there are more big demons that are strong hits and more synergies with it. Next up, Cursed Campaign. Give a friendly minion death rattle, summon 2 copies of this minion that are dormant for 2 turns. This is an interesting one. This is the sort of thing that you really need to like kind of combo this off with something in order for this to be effective. Like this needs to hit like a Doomguard or something else that has like an immediate impact when it pops up. But yeah, it doesn't really seem likely to be very effective, like, right away. Maybe it's good. Maybe there's tools that make this powerful. Right now, this definitely feels like it is not great. Again, maybe like I said, maybe with Doomguard, but like trying to play combo cards with Doomguard when it makes you discard cards in your hand definitely is troubled. Who knows? Maybe put this on like it's not Nemzi. What is the death rattle? Like destroy cards in each player's deck, draw a discard thing or whatever. Just get a bunch of those and just ruin everything for everyone. Next up is Endgame. Resurrect your last demon that died. Obviously another pretty powerful like big demon card. Again, I don't know that there's necessarily enough like big demons for this to be good. But obviously if you have ways to get like big demons to play early, maybe this is good. Be able to get like a Doomguard into play or whatever. Like for instance, this. Maybe this is this Nemzi is actually the key. She has Battlecry, draw a demon, Death Rattle, swap places with it. So you could have this draw a big demon, get like say a Doomguard or whatever. The other big demon. Let's just take a look at the big demon in this set is Wretched Queen, which is an 8-cost 4/4 with Death Rattle. Summon 2 4/6 Knights with Tom. This is kind of Void Lord-ish, right? And this is a pretty powerful thing, obviously, if you get it early. I am curious if the Knights themselves are demons, right? Because if the Knights themselves are demons, this is incidentally like a bit worse, because it means that your end game can potentially not summon the Wretched Queen. Someone in the chat said the Knights are demons. So that is a little bit unfortunate, because it does mean that you can end up resummoning those with end game rather than resummoning the Queen herself. But, it has definitely some, synergies there that are a little bit anti-synergies, but can still be potentially, potentially good. But yeah, that is Nemzi's obviously like a pretty key element to the sort of big demon effect working, with you know Wretched Queen alongside it. Next up we have Malefic Rook. This is another like, hey, you want to cheat this in the play for sure. 3 cost 5/6 demon battlecry attack your hero. A lot of ways to mitigate this. You can use the weapon. You can also use Void Virtuoso. Probably not going to play this in deck with Void Virtuoso because Void Virtuoso is itself a demon, and if you're playing, you're probably going to be playing like end game and things like that that just want big demons. But this, you do have the possibility of having this as like kind of the like littlest of your big demons in a deck that is looking to be basically a big demon deck. Next up is Sketch Artist. Battlecry, draw a shadow spell, get a temporary copy of it. So 3 cost 3/3 Battlecry, draw a specific category of spell is like not bad. The temporary copy is interesting because this could be like, hey, I'm gonna draw something and can get like, in the late game it can be like higher value because you get to use the additional copy. Fortunately, curses are going away. This drawing like curses and getting you extra copies of like the curses could be real annoying. But those are rotating. So I'm happy about that. But like, for instance, this is a shadow spell. Table Flip. Deal 3 damage to all enemy minions. Cost 1 less for each other card in your hand. Notably, Handlock is kind of back. Because the Giants are back. Both Molten Giant and Mountain Giant are back. So you could potentially use like Molten Giant alongside, Malefic Rook, or like playing a Mountain Giant alongside Table Flip. And being able to play cards like Sketch Artist, potentially draw like, hey, I'm gonna, I'll spend my mana, I'll draw a Table Flip, which will cost way less because my hand is full, and boom, free or cheap Table Flip because, hey, it's an extra card in my hand. This could cost as low as 1 if you have a full hand. Just nuke your opponent's board for cheap. And again, like in like a handlock style deck, having a card that not only replaces itself, but also gets you a temporary additional copy can be quite powerful. Then we have Tabletop Role Player, a 4-cost 4/3 with miniaturize. Battlecry, giving friendly demon +3 attack and immune this turn. This is clearly for a like more aggressive demon deck. A lot of the imp cards are going away, right? Because all of the stuff from, was it Murder Castle after that had a bunch of the existing imp stuff? Because that had like Vile Library and such. Those are all gone, which means a lot of like the aggressive demons are gone, right? Like there's no more, and also like Imp Gang Boss and Fiendish Circle are out of core. So there's a lot less to be able to effectively use this for like an aggressive version of Demon Zoo. Like it doesn't give, if this game like gave like life steal rather than immune, I could see using it with like Malefic Rook and just being like an aggressive deck. Because that's another thing. Like you could just use Malefic Rook, right? Like this could just be in like an aggro deck, right? Like this isn't necessarily just like, hey, I'm playing big demons. This could just be like, screw it, I'm just playing like cheaper Pit Lord and just smashing you, not mitigating the damage, just like taking the damage. That's fine. And notably, Spellstone's back, which cares about you damaging yourself, right? Like Spellstone cares, cares about damaging yourself with your own cards. So you could just play like a deck that plays like Spellstones, and plays Malefic Rook to upgrade the Spellstone, and then just use the Spellstone as removal to gain life back as well. So yeah, there's a lot of like options for some of these things, like the Rook, but Tabletop Role Player definitely feels a little bit less exciting to me, because I don't really see like a 4/3 for 4. Let's pull it up again. A 4/3 for 4 is just like really really weak stats. It doesn't have a minion type of its own. Obviously, miniaturize is good, but I don't really see there being like enough like cheap aggressive demons that you really want to like pair this with in the current format right now. But I could very easily be wrong. But this one, our final card of the pool of Warlock cards, Wheel of Death. 8 costs shadow spell. Destroy your deck. In 5 turns, destroy the enemy hero. Um, this is just hilarious. I don't think this card is any good, right? It feels very unlikely that this card is any good because 5 turns is a long time, right? A long time. And barring any kind of like way to mitigate your fatigue damage, you're taking a lot of fatigue, right? You take one and then two and then three and then four. I don't know whether it triggers at the end of the turn or the beginning of your turn. So I don't know if you take 5 fatigue damage from the last one. Like, do you take 15 or 10? But yeah, you either need ways to like refill your deck, or to mitigate the fatigue damage like harp. And in that whole time, you've just spent 8 mana to do nothing, and then you still need to win the game. I think this is mostly just a crazy highlight reel, like wacky, fun card rather than a card that you'd seriously build a deck around. Maybe you're playing this and you're just like you're playing this as like a steam cleaner for your sludge deck that has additional upside, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's cool. You can play Thanatum for 0 the moment you play this, which is sick, right? Like you can play this, immediately play a 15/15 Lifesteal Taunt, which certainly can buy you some time if your opponent can't kill it, right? But yeah, I think this card is sweet. I don't think it's good. I definitely think it's a card that I will experiment with and will be a like wild, wacky highlight reel card. But I would be very surprised if it becomes a meaningful component of the metagame. But overall, Warlock seems pretty interesting. I definitely think that the big demon stuff, along with like Malefic Rook, are really kind of the standouts. Malefic Rook as either a hyper aggressive card. I think you can the what's its name, Imprisoned Horror, that cares about like damaging yourself for cost reduction, is still around, and that is the sort of card that can be very very powerful alongside that, along with again like the Spellstone. That definitely synergies there, synergies with Endgame, synergies with Crane Game, a lot of stuff that you can potentially do. So a lot of interesting things. Certainly excited to experiment with all the various angles that some of these cards can take. And certainly excited to try to Wheel of Death someone and ever get to win with it, because that's an achievement to unlock.